Okay, hope everyone's having a nice weekend. Look forward to another video update. I'm doing Bitcoin high time frame, a little bit of low time frame. I'm going to go through MicroStrategy. I'm going to go through Mara, and then the minor Bitcoin pairs, and then we'll call it a day. So just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know what's going to happen next in markets. I just have really strong beliefs. Please use this as educational purposes only. Do your own research. And with that, let's get this kicked off. So the latest video I did was last Tuesday. And from that perspective, again, not much has changed. We continue to just sort of consolidate within what I consider this major fifth final leg impulse movement, whatever you want to call it, of this cycle. And I'm open to another interpretation of kind of what's going on right now, and I'll get to that in a second. But so far we just seem to be consolidating from a technical standpoint above what I consider this major third impulse. That all-time high region, just continue to consolidate above it, which is, again, I consider a support region. So consolidating over support, much like you that were following me over the summer when I started doing these videos. Remember, I was max bullish here. I was max bullish here. Why? Because I considered this a massive accumulation range, much like this structure back here. I considered a massive accumulation range with a spring event, right? With this, here's accumulation range, and this is the spring event. And we were simply showing a sign of strength, consolidating above it, sign of strength, consolidating above it prior to expansion. And true expansive movements, you don't see a lot of reprieve. You don't see a lot of retests of areas everybody's looking for. You don't see a lot of major corrections. And when I mean major correction, I mean, to the tune of 20 to 30%. And that's why this, in my mind, this cycle is playing out much differently than a lot of the people that were expecting to see 20, 30% corrections along the way vis-a-vis the 2016, 2017 run, because the character of this market, in my opinion, is just different. And so what are we doing right now? If we're now looking at, just consider this entire range as an accumulation, right? A massive accumulation type of event. And it kind of is and it kind of isn't. And then a massive spring type of event. What are we doing right now? This is a SOS. This is a sign of strength consolidating above a breakout area. Just a larger view type concept of what I just shared with you within those two accumulation ranges. So when I need to be the most bullish at key support areas, okay, I need to be the most bullish at key support areas. Now, that's not to say that the support is guaranteed to hold, because I haven't really done a Wyckoff on this entire area, so I can't claim that this is, a Wyckoff accumulation. I'm just kind of using the analogy of sign of strength over an area where 99% of the coins traded hands, right? And that's what this area is below it. And so we just continue to consolidate above it. Where I'm open to a little bit different of a view is the following. Let me zoom in here. Let me zoom in so this is easier to see. And let me throw up a daily chart. So what I'm open to right now is that maybe my count is a little bit off, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what's going on here, because you always have to leave room for that, because I just don't think, any of us are good enough to be able to accurately predict the path of an asset like Bitcoin. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. to do. And so I've got to be open to, where am I wrong? Okay, so this is a daily zoomed in on this entire major 4 to 5, okay, where we had one coming into March, and that's the minor wave one, where I claimed we had broken out of this accumulation range, okay, accumulation range, spring event FTX, and impulse one broke out of it. Okay, folks, that's kind of how I'm looking at this. And then we had a multi-month consolidation, kind of a WXY correction to form. And make this bigger, I'm sorry. This minor 2, and then coming out of minor 2, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 type of correction in the sell the news ETF narrative, which ended up just being a key inflection point, much like corrective 2 and corrective 4 waves elicit the feeling that it's over, right? We were wrong and the best is behind us. 2 did that over the summer. Remember, we were at the end of August retesting that 25, and we saw a lot of calls for back to 12, back to 10, much like end of January, 39, 38, it's going back to 30, it's going back to lower. These are what corrective sequences are designed to elicit on market participants. And so the way I have it counted is 3, 4, and then 5, subwave 5 of this minor 3. Now, where could I be wrong here? Where I could be wrong is my interpretation of the counts. I could be wrong in all of this, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but I strongly believe that the greatest part of this rally is in front of us, and I still do. Nothing has changed. The only question to me is, am I wrong in this interpretation? So let's just say, we had a 5-wave move coming out of this subwave 4 to make minor 3, okay? To make minor 3. And the only reason I don't like minor 3 here is the proportion of, where we kind of came from 1 and 2. Such a massive accumulation range. This is such a massive correction into 2. This just seems like a premature 3, but I could be wrong. Maybe it is a premature 3. And we're in the process of completing 4. If that's the case, then I see this correction potentially going a little bit longer in time, and possibly in price as well. If we're truly making a 4 here, and then next is blow off 5, then this could continue to go down, and even a correction into 56, 55 structurally would make perfect sense in the context of this, sub 4, prior to one last push to a blow off north of 140 to 200, 250, 260, something in that range. So that's a possibility as well. It's not my base case. Let's just see what that extension is on the fibs for that third. Yeah, so I mean that hit the 3.618 extension, this third off of one origin of impulse. So that's not, that's a pretty common extension. So, again, Bitcoin likes to exceed in my mind, especially in these major impulsive moves, the most common fib extensions. But again, there's some confluence there. So I have to be open to the idea that I'm wrong. And which is why, folks, and I think this is the important part of the video. It doesn't matter. Let's say this is one of these two paths is what's potentially ahead of us. The theory in at least Elliot wave type principles amongst investors is most of the profits should be secured in whatever asset you're in. in that wave, in that third wave, because this fifth wave is never guaranteed. You could get a truncated fifth wave, or you could be misinterpreting. You could be misinterpreting the structure, the count, like I just depicted. So if in fact we're making a 4, if we're making 3 and then 4 here, and 5 ends up even not going up to my target, but I think this is a 3, and we have another dip, which I'm happy to hold through before going back up, and that was misinterpreted, and we don't get that. If I had taken profits in what I perceive to be this third wave, then it wouldn't matter. You see what I'm saying? Then it wouldn't matter. Then it wouldn't matter if I was wrong, whether this was in fact the third, or third was here, and this was, I was taking profits into the wave 5. Okay. So just some thoughts on that. I felt that was important to illustrate and talk through. Next chart kind of, adds some confluence to that, right? I posted this one yesterday. This is the old parabolic curve pattern. We see this one all the time. And there is just so much similarity. I'm sure it's a coincidence in terms of how Bitcoin is reacting, but in all seriousness, you typically have, a base, right? And then you have a second base, base 2, then you have a third base, and then price of the asset doubles quickly. And it went from this third base 40,000 to 73, 72 and 9, whatever it was. So it did double, almost double pretty quickly. The other thought here is, as I've got this other circle base 4, so my assumption is we're still in this base 3 to base 4 movement, because we didn't quite double, and that's what I would expect from Bitcoin as a minimum double from this third to fourth move, which also coincides with my Elliot wave count, right? I'm using, as I mentioned, if that was the minor wave 3 that I just shared, in terms of how Bitcoin moves, that's pretty tame in my mind. And so this is another point of confluence to that, where I would expect, something up in that range, consolidation prior to that last move to form a base 4. Now, I could be wrong here too, right? Here's other ways that I'm wrong is we're forming that base 4 right now. Okay, we're forming that base 4 right now, and what comes next is that portion of the chart, and in that context, there's still room for movement, for correction, right? In that context, there's still room for more time-based than anything. If anything, it's time-based. I mean, from a price perspective, we're at 64.4 right now. A correction down to 57, 56 isn't that substantial from a price perspective prior to making a potential monster move. And so that, again, is why I have to be cognizant of whether we get something like that, or I'm sorry, that was too much. Whether we get something like, this consolidation here and then movement, or something like this and then this, doesn't matter. Either way, my profit targets for the Bitcoin derivatives, the miners, you should be thinking about this way for altcoins, should be somewhere in that movement. Should we get it in my mind? And again, I'm not a financial advisor, but this is just my view on profit taking strategies, and I think that's important, so I'm gonna mention that. Okay, what's next? Next is low time frame. I posted this chart yesterday. Again, so there's two lenses at which we can look at this from. One is that my original count is in fact correct, and we are in the midst of this let me just zoom out. We're in the midst of making completing minor wave 3 of the subwave 5th. Okay, so that's the lens at which I'm looking at this from. And we've got 3, 4 flat correction, and coming out of the flat correction, this is the most powerful portion potentially of this rally, if that's in fact what this is. So now let me zoom in and share a chart that I posted yesterday. So far it looks pretty good. I think I was actually a few hours off with my initial count. So yesterday I kind of had this, where did I have this Y? I had this Y here. We came back for another one. Boom. Bounced right off that 236. That's a 236 off what I consider impulse 1 or end of C correction. And so, you know, what I want to see here to give me more confluence that potentially this correction is over. Potentially my initial count is still the primary count. Is I want to see, you know, I want to see a reclaim of this, that X leg, that corrective, what I'm considering 1, 2, 3, right? That's a double. You've got 1, 2, 3, you've got 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so I'm looking for I want us to exceed that 66,585. You know, best case is on a daily close, 4-hour, not as strong, but you know, I see that, and then I'm going to say to myself, okay, potentially fresh impulse is being initiated, and we'll know price is going to, if in fact that's the case, and this correction is over, which again, the miners, I think, are really telling me this correction's over. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But if, in fact, that was the end of the correction, then I'd expect to see major movement, faster movement into the 80s next week. Okay? That's what confirmation of that idea looks like, folks. MicroStrategy continues to impress. I know we all want price to go up forever and every day, but folks, let's keep in mind what happened here. The price of MicroStrategy was $684 on Tuesday, February 20th. Price of MicroStrategy went to $1,700, $1,800 in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And so when I make some of the assessments in terms of what I think are going to happen in the miners, it's not based on hope and you know, just foolish forecasts. It's based on technicals. And MicroStrategy is already showing us that in action. And so the timing is really hard to predict. But once key technical areas in, you know, I mean, this goes back, this technical area that I'm pointing to right now in MicroStrategy, that B wave goes back to November of 2021. And so what's the technical setup here that then caused price to basically go, you know, basically double in 2 weeks? Well, it exceeded that B with power, with strength. And once it did that, it just went to new all-time highs, and it went well past all-time highs and then overshot it. Now, where do I think MicroStrategy goes from here? Well, there's a couple scenarios, right? And it's all predicated on what I just went through earlier. We could be in the midst of making this subwave 3, 4 correction right now, which could be over, or could take us into the next week or two. I don't know. We're going to find out. And then we get a little blow off 5th to make this subwave 3, and then corrects with Bitcoin in 4, and then blows off into 5. Or we could, we could, like I said, with Bitcoin, be making our, 3, working on a 4, which would then, in my mind, take us to a couple weeks, month potential correction into April prior to a final blow off like such. But the miners really are what's telling me that this is my base case. And let me get to that. Okay, so that's the good stuff. Let me use this. This is the WGMI Bitcoin, so the Bitcoin mining ETF against Bitcoin weekly chart. And so what we've seen as Bitcoin has been completing its corrective move in the last week. Okay, what have the miners been doing? Well, they've been rallying against Bitcoin, and not just rallying, but rallying in an important structural manner. Okay, now since Bitcoin hit its all-time high earlier on in March, I concede it made a new all-time high in a corrective manner, and the miners were sniffing that out. And so what happened this week in the miners is just structurally one of those things that you don't see very often. When you do, you take notice and use it in your analysis of what I've just presented to you before. So here we're going back all the way to December of 2022. We have a low. Okay, we've got a low established, and then we've got another one. Okay, so we've got 2 points of confluence, 1, 2, double bottom, and then you get a breach of that double bottom, and it was nasty. Remember what those miners did? I think Mara was at like 34 and got all the way down to 17, was it? I mean, almost a 50% haircut on some of these miners. And so that looks like capitulation to me. But then the following week, what did we have? And we had not only engulfed the entire previous weekly's action against Bitcoin, as Bitcoin was correcting, mind you, Bitcoin was going down. The miners engulfed the entire previous weeks of action and reclaimed this green rectangle. Essentially is this demand zone that goes back all the way 2 years that we breached and essentially came back up and reclaimed. That to me is structurally massively bullish. And that to me says more than anything that major expansion is next. At a minimum, I would expect the miners, this miner pair, if this is a 15-minute chart, I'm expecting that's where it's going next. Okay. And that right there is 50% outperformance against Bitcoin, mind you. That's a 50% outperformance move against Bitcoin from where we are right now. 51%. Okay. Now, why I think that's not it. Like there's potentially more outperformance on the miners against Bitcoin is when you get these. Well, let me start here. Okay. We had this first kind of low established, and then we go up to this supply range, right? And this supply range was established here. We had a break of market structure, retest underneath of supply, and we had a rejection. Come back up to this break of market structure supply region, and you had a rejection. Okay, that's what established this first pivot low. Next, and it took a bit of energy, right? So higher low here, energy, higher low, and it busted through. All right. Next, we had our first pivot high established. We have 2 points of confluence there. We got 1 point of confluence here, and then we had 1 point of confluence here. So we've got an established, channel range, if you will, which makes sense. The Bitcoin miners against Bitcoin long-term are going to bleed against them, right? This is a channel that's pointing down, in my opinion, and I think that's a pattern that continues. Now we had this massive move. Remember that ended November against Bitcoin, and it was all over again for the miners. And we stopped at this important demand level, and we reversed, attempted to break back above this supply area, and did, but we did with this like shooting star, right? And that candle's ugly. That is an ugly candle. That is an ugly candle. And so that was a reversal candle. In fact, it did reverse under test of supply. Then we breached this demand zone, and it's all over. We saw a lot of people sell miners for MicroStrategy. And then what happened the next week? And mind you, price is making a lower low. We have a very strong bullish divergence here. This is a weak bull div, right? Price makes a lower low, RSI equal-ish. That's just weak. But here, I submit we had far more capitulation with folks just seeing Bitcoin rip and the miners go down, where I think this would not surprise me at all. Something like that. Top end of the range, just absolute face ripper, starting from a point where people capitulated on miners for other things, and at a point where potentially Bitcoin is breaking into price discovery. That's what has me thinking these miners could be the most beta compared to MicroStrategy, compared to Bitcoin moving forward. Now, reminder what I just shared with you on MicroStrategy, okay? Remember that? Remember that important pivot point going back to November of 2022? And what MicroStrategy did once it broke that area. Well, Mara right now, Mara hasn't been able, and this pretty much goes for all the miners, folks. Pretty much goes for all the miners. This is that area. This is that area on MicroStrategy for Mara, okay? And so when you look at this critical area on Mara, we bumped up against it once, twice, 3 times, and we've been rejected. But what is price doing after it gets rejected, folks? This is the key. This is the key. Price is making what? Higher lows. What's it doing at the top? Compressing. What is this structure? This is just a consolidation structure, okay? And so that would be my expectation coming out of this. Should Bitcoin follow the path that I'm forecasting, the miners, I think, are waiting to do what MicroStrategy just did. And so, once, if and when on a weekly basis, we can get above a 27, 28, 29 close, then I think that these names get moving. I wouldn't be surprised to see the MicroStrategy doubled in less than 2 weeks. Again, the miners, I wouldn't be surprised to see that in a week, 2 weeks. If and when that happens, I think these names get moving very, very fast. So with that, I think that's the last of my updates. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and take care.